The tainted Rassokha graveyard is bordered by a thick green forest located 25 kilometers southwest of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. In 1987, the year after the Chernobyl disaster, Ukrainian authorities decided to quarantine the helicopters, tanks, buses, bulldozers, transporters, ambulances, and fire engines that had been heavily irradiated in emergency and cleanup missions. The site is located in the Exclusion Zone, an area covering more than 1,000 miles of Ukraine and Belarus, where the public's access is restricted and in some cases strictly forbidden. You can't visit the village of Buryakivka, but if you could, this is what you'd see. 1,350 Soviet vehicles rusting in an open field, most of them missing parts, engines, rotor blades, catalytic converters. For decades, thieves have been able to enter this mass vehicle graveyard armed with torches and hacksaws, stealing scrap metal that can be melted down, repossessed, and sold. Today, the 30-kilometer radius around the most contaminated area, the Exclusion Zone, is a mausoleum of man's technological folly. Its ruination has become a symbol of the failed utopian ideals of the Soviet Union, a warning of humanity's capacity to wreak ecological havoc, and a reminder of both our fragility and resilience. Cemetery Rassokha is located on the outskirts of the Chernobyl zone, near the village of the same name, Rassokha. Before the accident, 416 inhabitants lived here, and after the accident, they were evacuated to the village of Koloshchina, Makarowski district. The radiation level on the first days exceeded the norm by 800 times. All village inhabitants and those living in more isolated rural areas close to the temporary outdoor storage sites like Rassokha were forced to comply with an emergency evacuation. After the last of the former residents had left, human habitation in the villages surrounding such places was forbidden. Since the open-air vehicle storage facility failed to meet minimal safety standards, officials decided to build a safer facility for radioactive waste that could last more than 300 years. The decision to construct an industrial complex within the exclusion zone for the decontamination, transportation, treatment, and disposal of radioactive waste from the areas contaminated in the aftermath of the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, the project's long title was given the simple codename Vector, was officially approved in 1988. Vector's location was decided on in 1991, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The site chosen is just 1 kilometer from the original vehicle graveyard in Buryakivka. As for the radiation level at the moment, it's not high, but several PTSs and a couple of armored personnel carriers emit about 20 to 60,000 micro-R per hour. It's all about the dirty tracks, which were never washed after the accident. Actually, for this reason, the technique is here. It's a well-known fact that a huge amount of equipment took part in the elimination of the accident. All sorts of machines were involved in the work, from ordinary buses to robotic systems. It was necessary to clean the equipment from radiation dust and pollution after some time, but in the end, so much radioactive substances accumulated in the metal that further, not even a short-term stay in the cabin of such a tractor or crane became impossible. Therefore, the burial ground became the last refuge for this technique. Some of the machines were buried in the ground, but thousands of units were involved in the elimination of the accident, and it was expensive to bury everything in the ground. Therefore, it was decided to make sites for the storage of radioactive equipment. The legendary helicopters immediately found their last refuge, from which sand, lead, and dolomite were dropped onto the destroyed reactor. Fire trucks, buses, and other equipment were forever frozen here. Especially worth noting is military equipment, which was used most intensively in the year after the accident. Rassokha has deployed engineering vehicles for clearing, armored repair and recovery vehicles, floating tracked transporters, wheeled armored personnel carriers, chemical reconnaissance vehicles, and many other types of special equipment. A few words deserve the legendary clearing vehicles, IMR-2, assembled on the basis of the T-72A tank. They were used for radiation reconnaissance around the walls of the damaged reactor. They were used to clean the area of debris scattered by the explosion. These machines helped in the construction of the first, or as they called, the pioneer walls of the future sarcophagus, which gave people the opportunity to come close to the destroyed reactor and start building the shelter object. From the USSR, it was the only machine adapted to work in an area of high radiation pollution. The area of Rassokha burial ground is approximately 20 hectares. For a scrapper, the kilometer-long Rassokha field is a gold mine, even though recent aerial images show that a number of vehicles have finally been relocated. There are still plenty sitting around in the brown grass, and an unknown number of vehicles buried underground. It's the vehicles that were buried that were said to have been the most highly contaminated with radiation. The open field at Rassokha is a grim burial ground, where there was never supposed to be anything other than a temporary emergency storage. The foreman tasked to seeing to it that no scrap scavengers stole any radioactive metal from the site told a filmmaker in 1999, "We're waiting for the completion of Vector," but construction on the site didn't begin until 1998, a decade after the plan was approved. In the meantime, radioactive metal has been scrapped and stolen. On September 11, 2009, Ukraine's security services, SBU, stopped a truck carrying 6 passengers as it attempted to leave the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone. The truck happened to be carrying 25 tons of radioactive scrap. The level of radiation emitted by the scrap was 13 times higher than what was advisable. An SBU investigation revealed that police officers tasked with patrolling the inside of the exclusion zone had conspired with the scrappers. One deputy SBU chief was also in on the plan. The first fully functional phase of Vector wasn't operable until 2007, almost 20 years after the facility's construction was first approved by authorities. Even Natalia Ryabulka from State Nuclear Inspectorate of Ukraine has acknowledged that the delay of Vector's implementation due to insufficient financing for Stage 1 resulted in a lack of possibility for improvement of the radiological situation inside the exclusion zone. Right now, plans are for an interim 100-year repository for high-level radioactive waste is the priority for the site's development. Russia's Mayak facility is currently processing the spent fuel reactors that will eventually be transported back to Vector's disposal facility. Ukraine is expected to receive the processed spent fuel reactors from Russia in 2022. In the meantime, the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone safety, security, radioactive storage, and emergency services appear to be lagging dangerously far behind. On April 28, 2015, a serious forest fire broke out in the exclusion zone. The Chernobyl Pushka Forest was in flames inside the obligatory resettlement area, where no humans are allowed to live, and rapidly spread very close to Buryakivka and its enormous vehicle scrapyard. People feared that the Rassokha graveyard could be consumed by the flames, and that the smoke rising from the fire could carry those long-settled particles of SR-90 and CS-137 away to a place where people still live. The flames narrowly missed Buryakivka. An announcement posted on the website of Ukraine's Ministry of Emergencies said the forest fire required 51 ground vehicles, 3 fire planes, 2 helicopters, 305 firefighters, 253 additional personnel, and 16 hours to bring under control. The fire spread across 40 hectares. authorities assured the anxious public that there was no spike in radiation. Nobody really knew exactly what needed to be done in the Chernobyl cleanup effort. At first, the Soviets tried to use robots to clean up the material on rooftops. They even used a valuable lunar rover, which was one of several rovers the Soviets designed to explore the moon. It was later revealed that in an effort to play down the scale of the disaster, the Soviet authorities had reduced the stated levels of radiation by 90%. Due to the radiation, the rovers, along with 60 other robots, eventually failed. Even those machines that could cope with the radiation often cease function after being decontaminated with water jets. A human workforce, named liquidators, were drafted in to carry on with the deadly task. They also used a robot they borrowed from West Germany. It wouldn't have been easy for them to ask the West Germans for help, but they asked if they could use one of their robots, and they agreed. So the West Germans thought it was fine to lend them their robot, but as soon as the Joker got up on the roof, it trundled forward a meter or so, and then died. Later, it was dumped in a forest. We hope you liked the video, and we want to know which was your favorite. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and hit the subscribe button and bell down below if you want to make sure you never miss out on important new information like this.